Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another Championship Manager stream. 1 o'clock on Friday. Best time to do it. We had to wait for the double game week to finish yesterday, and we'll be all set for game week 18, hopefully, once we've finished this one. I'm joined by the ever knowledgeable Luke. How are you doing?
I'm extremely hot, mate. I've got windows open. This is a tiny office. It's lucky I didn't have my shirt off, to be honest. Oh, my God. I'm roasting here. But apart from that, I'm good.
Yeah, we were just talking about this before we come on. I'm exactly the same. This could not be any smaller. I've literally got everything I could fit in here, and that is it. So the computer kicks out so much heat, and it's been on most of the day as well. So it's boiling here. So both of us have got windows open, so if you hear random noises, you just have to put up with it, to be honest. This is live, and that's how it goes. So yeah, lots to talk about today. Before we even get into the Game Week 18 stuff, how did you get on in the double game week that we just had, Game Week 17?
Yeah, I was dreading it, to be honest with you, because I only had two Manchester United players in Silvestre and Van Nistelrooy. Didn't have a Man United midfielder. And after running the Sims and obviously two good games, I was extremely fearful of one of them doing well, in particular Veron. So it went and happened. But because I played my triple captain trip on Van Nistelrooy, it wasn't all bad. I ended up with just under 100 points. I think I got like 98 or something. So I know there were some monster scores out there. And probably quite a few who beat me without using a triple captain. But at least I've got some value out of that chip, I feel, as like an independent thing. So I'm quite happy with that part of it. I just wish I'd bought Veron in for a hit. But, you know, when I thought that you could potentially miss out on one of them, that could have easily backfired if I'd have done that. So, yeah, not too bad overall. And my team's I was going to say in a reasonable position moving forward. But again, picked up a Silvestre injury and we got a couple of Middlesbrough woes with a couple of players on low conditions. So we'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah, Boksic in particular comes up a lot in the questions. Like my game week was pretty much the same. I'd already taken Veron out for a hit the week before. Now I haven't gone back and worked it out, but given that I bought in like Boa Morte and stuff, I would probably say I'm still up. I may at least equal. I don't think I've lost out by selling Veron. Although obviously it would have been nice to have him. But I triple captain Van Nistelrooy as well. 15 points from the chip. I'm fine with that. Don't usually do much better than that in FPL, that's for sure. And yeah, I had Silvestre. I got 107, I think. Thinking about it now, I can't even remember why I got all those points. I bought in Blanc for Honsho for a hit. I think that just about worked out as well. So, yeah, overall, pretty good week. I'm pretty happy to have played the triple captaincy. I might even play another chip this week, which we'll come on to as part of one of the questions. Before we start off, there's a couple of things to kind of not necessarily announce, but talk about. So, one, anyone that's watching this who isn't already a player, you can now sign up and get involved on, I think it's fantasychatman.com. Either way, that's the right address, right? I'm pretty sure it is. If not, I'll have the right address in the description anyway. And essentially,
I think you have to put www in front of it. That's the only thing.
Yeah. I'll have the link in the description anyway. But basically, the game is now open to everyone. There's no letting people in on season league. So that's when, like, kind of, if you're a new player, I guess, the real scoring starts. So if you want to like get involved, see what it's all about, that is the place to head. And also as part of that, this is probably going to be, for now at least, the last podcast we do on this channel. But Luke, so let's be honest, no one's watching this for me. They're all watching it for you anyway. So luckily, you get less me and more Luke, which is basically perfect. So tell them what you're going to be doing from next week onwards.
I think you've beat me in score-wise like the last 3 weeks, Andy.
I am into the top 300, starting from the bottom, so I'm doing pretty well.
There you go, mate. So I think, to be honest, you're doing yourself a disservice there. But yeah, anyway, I think from now on, obviously, real FPL is going to be starting up. Fantasy Football Scout's going to be quite busy. That plays a part in it. And also these guys have kindly asked me to come on and help them to run a second stream. So already we have a stream running on a Sunday by the guys who obviously give all the information out. They've kindly asked me to come along and do one on Thursdays. So after the Wednesday's game week, we should have a similar one to the Sunday one, just me on my own, and I'll be working through the game and obviously asking any questions, giving all the info that comes out in terms of injuries, etc. So pretty much the same thing, but me instead of the two guys. So looking forward to that, and that's where it will continue to be on. I'll also do my own videos from my own channel every now and then, but yeah, so that should be good.
Yes, there's going to be even more stuff, and I'll add the link to their channel or the official channel, I guess I should say, in the description. So if you want more Championship Manager FPL, that is the way to go. But yeah, we'll get on with this one. I think the first thing I wanted to talk about was the Man United double game week and the stats and stuff. So I'll bring up the Leicester ones first. I mean, did this game week kind of obviously they beat Leicester 3-0? I don't think anyone was expecting a weird result from this one. Did it kind of go as you expected?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this game. I think sometimes we've talked about it before. When you've got Man United at home to a lesser team, and Leicester, well, even if they're hit by rotation, they generally comfortably dispatch, and often sort of 3-0 is the go-to score, I would say, as the average quite often. So it went very much according to how we expected. It was quite a high chance for rotation in this one, and it didn't really happen. So that was great. And as expected, Van Nistelrooy was coming out as the best option for that week. Veron was also doing very, very well. And I'm just happy that Van Nistelrooy started because this was his money game. Quite a lot of us had the triple captain on him, and when I saw him in the lineup, I was like, "That's fine." I just had faith that he would definitely get at least a goal, and to come through with 15 points is great. But yeah, it's not really too much to talk about stats wise. Leicester utterly dominated. They don't set up to attack at all. They actually go defensive straight from the off as you'd expect, and it would have been a shock if they conceded, to be honest. So Man United, that is. So yeah, as we expected.
What about Middlesbrough though? Because I mean, maybe I was wrong, but I thought this was going to be quite a tight game. But Middlesbrough, obviously, there was a red card which helped. Bartes got sent off, but Middlesbrough kind of, in terms of score at least, destroyed Man United. So, was it just the red card, or was there other factors at play here?
No, I mean, when I was running the Sims again, the average score for Middlesbrough, there was quite a low scoring one. They would get sort of just over one, so about 1.05 goals they'd average. And Man United was 1.30, I think, off the top of my head. But when I looked through it, Middlesbrough won it something like 7 times out of 20. There was quite a few draws. So it was a very, very even match overall. And obviously, for a team to come out with a tie against Man United and having up to 7 wins in 20, that's pretty damn good. You're not going to find that very often. I think probably Arsenal home to Man United is the next closest one you'll find to that. So it wasn't too much of a surprise they won. Obviously, the red card will have helped them as it happened. Was it around half time? I can't really see the graph.
Yeah, 46th minute.
Yeah, so that's a long time to play with 10 men, isn't it? And at that point, you'd expect Man United went a little bit more defensive, and Middlesbrough also would have just played on the counter attack a little bit. But yeah, in terms of the game itself, again, the stats lent themselves to saying that Van Nistelrooy might struggle in this game. For him, anyway, was obviously he's an absolute beast, and for him to hit a 7, I think tells that story. Because I think he's hit an 8 in every game, or at least above. May have hit 1-7, but it's very rare to see it. And that's mainly due to the fact that Ekiog and Southgate, who surprisingly didn't play, are just really, really good centre-backs, and he actually struggles against them. If you see on the stats there, he always gets a bunch of headed attempts, but he usually does quite a lot better. He still won 4 key ones, but lost quite a few, and that'll just be because Ekiog's absolutely dominant in the air. And as a result, though, Veron gets all the freedom in midfield to dominate, and he seemed to do really well. And as soon as I saw that he was starting, I felt like he was going to do pretty well. And obviously, he got his goal in a 9. He's another one who, as long as he's on the pitch, his average rating is usually an 8 or a 9 by the end of the game. So he's very, very reliable. And yeah, it kind of went to type on that one as well. The clean sheet was always going to be a risk for either team. Not many of those floating about. And then the popular assets like Fester and Johnston denied the man of the match, despite getting a higher rating on the bug in the first game. So I was livid about that. And then Fester goes and gets the penalty. Of course, I know he's got penalties, but to get it in the 2 weeks again, I was like, oh, God's sake. So yeah, I just like to be a little bit different sometimes, and that one didn't really work out. But most of the popular assets returned, and Boksic got an assist even, which I wasn't expecting much from here. So I think really good for just general ownership. I think nearly everyone did pretty well out of that Man United Middlesbrough game for both their Middlesbrough and Man United assets. So great game.
Yeah, I pretty much figured that the Leicester game was decent for the triple captain. If Van Nistelrooy could get anything out of Middlesbrough, that would be good. So it's a bit annoying that Veron didn't, or Veron outscored him. But the fact that Nistelrooy already had 15 points, or not already 15 points, but already had a couple of goals, yeah, it was decent enough. So I was pretty happy with that. And how do you not have Johnston, by the way? I feel like every week we talk about midfielders, he's always like, well, Johnston's the obvious one, of course. You don't have him.
Yeah, let me explain that then. So I had Johnston at the very start of the season, and I held him for all his good points. And then Selakovic got signed, and got turned, and I thought I'll take. Boksic actually outscores Johnston slightly on an absolute tear. So I still know he's the best option, but I just haven't got him in my team, and I think I have to fix that because it's killing me every week, sadly.
Yeah, he's doing pretty well. And I can't remember where my notes are now for Middlesbrough fixtures, but I think they're looking pretty good as well coming up. All right, let's get into the questions because rather than kind of go through topics and then take the questions at the end, the questions are pretty much all the topics we would discuss anyway. And it's quite a lot. Like, I've literally got 4 different images with questions on. So let's kick it off. Tomo, FBL Blade, best budget strikers below 7.5 million. Now, it doesn't specifically mention Boksic, but I don't know if I put it on the images, but someone else basically asked about Boksic replacements. So I think that's what a lot of people are looking at. So there's one player that I've banged on about a lot in the last few weeks, and he keeps scoring.
You're going to say Pedersen.
Pedersen, yeah. It's got to be. Leicester at home next. It doesn't get much better than that, I don't think. Well, there are better matchups, I say, but Leicester's a pretty good game. West Ham, we've seen them get battered a few times, although that game is away. Derby away and Blackburn at home. So I think Pedersen, like, people, I feel like he's being overlooked quite a bit. So he was one on my list. I also had Sheringham at least for this week, but maybe not after this week. And Sturridge for Leicester is an interesting one because a lot of people came off him. And their fixture's looking all right to me. I don't know what you think about Sturridge going forward, but like, who do you think 7.5 million or below, especially if Boksic is not looking like an option right now, who you going for? Pedersen, right? Number 1 choice.
You've been calling Pedersen for weeks, and he just keeps returning. They'll come out to try and attack Bolton, and they're quite leaky themselves. So anything could happen in those. I don't dislike that at all. I also agree with you on the Sturridge one. I'm very much a fixtures person and matchup person. Yeah, his form has not been great. He's had some really tough games, though, so it's not surprising. The fact he's 5.5, because I know that can play on people's mind, like, therefore he's not as good as a striker as some of the 7 millions. Yeah, that's just not true. He is a really good player if he plays the game, if he starts, and that's usually his only issue. And in this sim, he's highly favoured. So, I can't argue with his games either. I do like him. The other one, I thought, it is definitely a tricky question, and I assume it's because they're coming off of Boksic. There's a couple of others I like. Carl Court potentially is one. I think we've got a question on him. So
I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, I suppose we'll leave it to that question. And the other one that I quite like and is quite out there, I think, is Ravanelli. Derby are playing away to Fulham, so not a great tie because they're away, obviously, and away strikers don't necessarily do that well, but it is Fulham. We know how leaky they can be. They will go guns blazing at home, as usual, and he might get some chances there. And then they've got 2 nice games at home to Sunderland, home to Bolton, straight after that. It depends how long you're holding these guys for and how long you need them for is probably the main point of this question. But for that little run of 3 games, I think that could be quite a cheeky little look. But apart from that, there's not too many, I would say, and that's why I kind of wanted that money for the bigger price strikers. They're more reliable, although Pedersen is showing us up every week.
He's a legend, yeah. There you go, there's a few options. Next one, replacement, obvious question because he's now injured for 2 game weeks. Silvestre, who can be a good replacement? I have him, and I know Ian Hart is going to, maybe not this week because it's Liverpool away, but after that we know he's got a good run, double game weeks coming up, etc. But like, is one replacement not just a straight swap to another Man United defender? Their fixtures are still incredible. They're still the best team. Like, would you just straight swap to a Man United player, or do you think Ian Hart's just going to be so good over these coming fixtures?
It's one of those ones where I think you probably do want Hart for the upcoming run. I mean, I certainly do. But the fact that his first game is away to Liverpool, you'd be quite lucky to come out of that with any points for Hart, I would say. I've only run a few sims on that, so it's very limited. But what I did look at, Liverpool comfortably won it, usually like 2-1, 3-1. And Leeds are not great defensively away. So for him to come out of a clean sheet of that, you'd be pretty lucky, I would say. Obviously, it's Hart, right? He can get a penalty, he can get an assist. I get that. And it saves a transfer down the line. So I certainly wouldn't argue with just going straight to it. However, I think you're right in terms of if you're on Silvestre, like I am, I don't have Blanc. There would be a high temptation just to make the switch because he's out for a month, right? So it's kind of a long-term thing. It's not. I mean, part of me feels like Blanc's got quite a high chance of getting rested for this West Ham game. It's another Rep 12 side. That's going to be 3 games in a row. We've got very lucky that they weren't rotated at all in those first 2. Now, I don't know whether that means they're therefore more likely to get rotated in the third as well, or is that gambler's falagro, whatever they call it. But for 3 Rep 12 games in a row, for him to start all 3, I'd be surprised. But he's got 2 out of 3 so far. So that's my only sort of hesitant thought on going straight to Blanc. But even if you discount that, they've still got a fantastic run after that. Away to Arsenal is not great, but then they've got Charlton, Derby and Ipswich.
Yeah, it's really good.
The bank. Yeah, so I mean, over the month, I'm not sure when Silvestre would actually be back, but you can be fairly sure that covering the best defence in the game is not a bad idea overall.
Can I ask a quick question while we're talking about Man United defence? Because a lot of people, I'd say, will be looking at this. Who is going to play left back instead of Silvestre?
Well, you can't say who it's going to be. It's going to be Irwin or Phil Neville.
Okay,
They're
not
not
just
they're
going
not
to be
going
one.
to play every game. No, it's not going to be one. Phil Neville's probably slightly ahead of Irwin, but we've already seen Irwin play this sim, and yeah, when Silvestre's out in my other sims, Irwin does come in quite a lot. So yeah, it's going to be one of those two. It makes them all slightly a little bit more nailed than they would be, but then still none of them are nailed because then obviously.
Yeah, that's where I'm good. Just is there anyone kind of so outside of heart of Man United? Like I kind of looked at the fixtures a bit. So Middlesbrough, Newcastle at home, Everton away. You've already mentioned Ekiog, Festa potentially, and I'm going to kind of skip into a question we got later on because one of the teams that's got decent fixtures, at least in the next two, is Ipswich away and Villa at home. That's Chelsea, who have sacked Ranieri, right? So one of the questions later on is, do any of that? Because one of the things you said about Chelsea a lot is their rotation nightmare. Are any of them not going to be a rotation nightmare now the manager's been sacked, or do you think it's just going to be the same old, same old?
It's got a very good chance to be same old because it doesn't change the fact that they've got lots of players in lots of positions that are all of very equal ability. So that will not change. The big draw will be, depending on which manager we get, obviously will depend on which formations they will play. I say formations because obviously it could change depending on who the manager is, home or away, etc. So we can't really know the answer to that until we know who's in there. I mean, if we get most managers in this game are 4-4-2, so it's a fairly safe assumption to think that whoever they get will probably play 4-4-2 because it's the most common. However, we don't know. And in that scenario, then you're looking at a back four, and then you have to look at them who can actually play as a right back for Chelsea. I mean, from memory, I don't think there's that many. I think it's basically Melchior. I think Gallas maybe can play right. I can't actually remember, but I don't think he would. So I think again he might end up being the safer option. But then you've got Albert Ferrer, who could come in every now and then.
So still a nightmare, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be inclined to say Desai is always the pick for Chelsea because his current ability and his reputation is so much higher than everyone else's, and I can't think of a formation that doesn't involve a centre back. So as unsexy as he might be, his average rating. Another thing is you might want to see their average rating will now start to increase because Chelsea can. With the back three, they play a combination of zonal and man marking usually. And zonal marking is not particularly good for average rating because the defender's not close to the striker and therefore can't make a load of challenges. So if the new guy comes in and is man marking, which is usually default in a 4-4-2, the centre backs suddenly increase their average rating. So Desai might start to see more bonus as a result of being up against someone more consistently.
Cool. So one to keep an eye. Yeah, I think there's quite a few defensive options, but the obvious ones to me just seem Hart or just go straight to a Man United player. Their fixtures are still so good. Talking of Man United, next question is also about them. Benny Blanco planned on moving off Veron after the double game week. Now having second thoughts. Is it wise to keep both Van Nistelrooy and Veron, or is it too much money for a player and captain? I mean, this is the ever debate that, or it happens in FPL. Is a player worth it if you're not going to captain? Like I literally got off him the week before to spread the money around because there's just a few players around the kind of 7-8 million mark that I wanted. I couldn't get all of them because I had Veron, and I've spread it around. Obviously, it did hurt in the double, and they do have really good fixtures. Like I really want to be tripled up still on Man United, but for me, it just feels like there's a little bit too much money, especially if you want to. We're going to talk about Leeds players in a sec. There's a few cheapy options in there, but you're probably going to want to spend a bit on them, I would say. So I do feel like it's a bit too much money right now. What do you think?
I think I'm along those lines as well. I mean, I decided pretty early on that fact that if I wasn't going to captain him, I didn't really think he'd be value over the course of the season. However, for their last tasty, it wasn't a double, but they had back-to-back games. I think it was Bolton and Everton or something like that, or maybe Southampton. But I did bring Veron in for those two games because there were such good matchups. And obviously he scored in the last minute, I think, in both of them and ended up being obviously a great value for that particular run. And I then took him back out again. Now, we can't always be in that position, but that's the way I would have liked to play it for this game week. I'd have liked to have get him in for this double, really wanted him, couldn't do it, unfortunately. And again, he did really well over that little period. So I think if you can play it that way and Man United's fixtures still continue to be pretty good, then I don't see any reason to get rid of him for a little while. Just because who cares what what his value is? At the end of the day, if he's scoring massive
Yeah,
amounts of
exactly.
points, and his values discussion is not really important at that point. Um, as soon as he goes on a little run where not scoring that much or rotated or gets subbed off, people will start turning their heads. I'm not, why am I paying 12 million and I'm not even captain? And it will start up again. And it's natural for it to happen that way. So for me, I don't think I'm going to be bringing him back in. And unless there's another little run where it becomes obvious, I'll be sort of leaving him out my team. I do think the forwards in this game are just very consistent for captain returns at home to, weaker sides and stuff, and Verona's as well. But we've got Van Nistelrooy set on your team. You've always got the chance of getting that wrong. It worked out well this week if people went Veron over Van Nistelrooy, but I think in the end it was only maybe 3 points difference between them. So again, it could have backfired. Obviously, I just prefer to take the choice out of my hands because I was bound to make the wrong one.
Yeah, like I took him out couple of weeks ago because it was literally like three. I took a 16-point hit as part of it, so I really was restructuring my squad. So if you could, like, I don't know, let's say you had Veron and like, I don't know, a 5 million or 6 million forward, and you wanted to swap the funds around in 2 moves, then maybe that's fine because you can then swap it back. But like, if you do what I've done, it then takes another big hit to get him back because you spread the money around. So it really depends on which players you want to bring in, I would say. I agree with the value thing. Yes, it's not great having a player that much if you're really missing out on other players. But if there's not many other players you want and you don't need that money, then I really wouldn't bother swapping them out.
I mean, if you're looking at, say, Selakovic and Viduka or something like that, that's an 8 million midfielder with quite a lot of potential to score quite close to Veron. And then you've got Viduka at 10 million, who's obviously a very reliable captain for a good run at 18 million. And then you look at the same Veron and then a 6 million
exactly.
striker.
Yeah.
And then when you're not going to captain Veron, I suddenly think that the other two will probably outscore them. But then because it's Man United and they've got this such great run, if Veron bangs 2 or 3 goals and gets through 2 or 3 penalties.
Just before I checked this stream, I knew they had a couple of good fixtures. I didn't realise it went on for that long.
The only thing is, I'll be surprised if he plays all of those games. I'll be stunned because he's played virtually every one so far, and Veron is one of the people who's quite often victim to Rep 12. I think he might have been this week if it wasn't for the fact that Scholes had already played 120 minutes in the League Cup. We also then had Keane suspended, so Butt came in for Keane. So then to get West Ham, Charlton, Derby and Ipswich and him continue to play everyone, I'd basically fall off my chair, but it could happen.
You never know. All right, well, we've mentioned Leeds players a few times already. So again, they do have a really good fixture on coming up, double game weeks and stuff. So Alex Waterbaby has asked, with Leeds' excellent fixtures and double game weeks coming up, which 3 would you recommend? So which are you going for 3, and which 3 are you going? I mean, like, to me, like Viduka and Hart +1 seems the play, but what are you thinking?
Yeah, exactly that. I'm going to have Viduka and Hart. Believe me, I'd love to have Kuhl. He's probably a little bit under the radar because he's obviously not done much in RSIM. He's also been away for Australia. He's had injuries. But anyone who plays this game knows that Kuhl is a really, really good pick in it. So yeah, they would be my preferred 3. Obviously, that's the most expensive 3, so it's not earth-shattering news that those are probably the best 3 people to go for. So I'm with you. It's Hart and Viduka is pretty much a lock for me, but I think there's a lot of viable options. Obviously, McPhail at 5 million, especially whilst Bowyer is out, who we've been robbed of, is still going to be value at 5 million. Will he score as well as some of the others? Probably not, but there's Robbie Keane, who still probably play most of the games and still can be great value at 8 million. You've also got Radaby at 5 million, who I think is better than Rio Ferdinand. Not only does he sometimes get pens, because we've obviously got Hart, but he could get subbed off or injured in the game or whatever. And I know Mabry took a penalty before, but he's not nailed either. So my next guest down the list would possibly be Radaby. And he actually gets slightly higher average ratings than Rio Ferdinand usually. Rio Ferdinand's got 8 for aggression, which really affects him because aggression's used for tackles. And although Rio Ferdinand's got amazing stats all over and is a great centre-back, he often struggles for average rating just because he doesn't put any tackles in. He just Rolls Royces and does what he did in real life, I guess. Stands next to people and scares them off the ball. But he suffers for average rating, unfortunately. So I'd pay the less money and get Radaby if I was going to do that. So there's quite a few options. I mean, you could even say Martin if you really wanted to. I know their defence hasn't been great, but their fixtures are really good. And that's still a pretty good price, I think, 5 million. If Seaman was to lose his place or get injured or whatever. So I don't know. I think there's quite a few. Any others that you think stand out to you, or
no, not really. To be honest, I think you mentioned all the ones I had listed. So I've got McPhail in my team.
Mm.
which I've just realised is actually going to screw up the transfer plans I have, because I had Boa Morte in as the pick to get Kewell in, so I'm not going to be able to do it now without taking McPhail out, which is a bit frustrating. Otherwise, yeah, Viduka, I mean, just seems like absolute must-have almost, and Hart the same, Backer in midfield. Yeah, otherwise Kewell, Hart pretty much the same players. I say a lot of people have got McPhail, so like thinking about it now, kind of after I hadn't thought about it before, I'm probably just going to keep him. I just don't know if it's going to be a worth a transfer to get rid of him to then get Kewell to then get another player in. So that's probably the three I'll go for: Hart, McPhail, and Viduka. Not worried. So it's not like I'm going to captain Kewell or anything like that. So I still think he's a good option, like you've said, but probably won't be the one that I get. I don't think.
No, yeah, I can see that. I'll probably end up with the same. I'd love to have Kewell because his average rating would be very high in some of these games, but when he's not on pens, set pieces, anything else, then when you got Selakovic at 8 million, for example, on pens and stuff, it starts to question it a little bit. Yeah.
Next question kind of mentions Leeds again, which we won't go into anymore. But FPL Wilson, is it time to get rid of Spurs? Maybe looking at Hart and Viduka. I think we've already answered the question on Leeds. They got really good fixtures. Yes, Hart and Viduka are good. In terms of getting rid of Spurs, I mean, it obviously depends which player you're getting rid of. But this week, definitely not the week to do it. I would say Charlton at home and Leeds have got Liverpool away. So I think you're kind of just a week early on this one. I just don't, right?
Yeah, you can't get rid of them home to Charlton, I would have said. My plan was my old mate Andy. You know who I'm going to say, Rebrov after this game. Who do you think I was going to say I was going to bring in?
Viduka, surely.
No. Well, I was going to get him as well, but for my other striker.
I can't think right now.
Who's my best friend in this game? Who plays up front and is the best striker in the world? Who is
Alan Shearer, of course. How could I forget?
Yeah, so exactly. So my move was going to be Rebrov after the Charlton game to Shearer for a lovely home to Ipswich, home to Southampton, plays home to Chelsea. Again, I think that's a pretty good game. Then he also plays in the blank against Fulham and then potentially has a double in 23. Followed it up by a home game to West Ham. Is just a really nice run for a guy who's probably gone off many people's radars. And what happens? Shearer gets injured again. So I think he now misses at least the first game of that. So might be back for Southampton. So I think it might be worth now holding on to. I mean, Red Bulls games weren't terrible. They're away to Leicester and away to Blackburn. Spurs aren't particularly good away. So it's a bit of a risk keeping them. But I think if you can manage to at least keep him for the away to Leicester and then maybe look at Shearer home to Southampton and 20, I like that straight swap. To be honest, and that's what I'm probably going to look to do if you're obviously in that position. Otherwise, it's just straight to Viduka, as we've already mentioned. I think keep the money up front if I was you guys, because these expensive strikers are highly reliable at home to these sides.
Yeah, I think I agree. Not this week. Next week, definitely can start looking at it. Next one's a bit more interesting. So Pep Talk said, when do you think the best time is to play the bench boost chip? And the reason he's asking is because there's so many injuries and suspensions in this game, as we've seen plenty of times. Silvestre again this week. He's going to be out now for a while. I'm not sure you can plan for having a decent full squad and availability, and you may just have to play it based on fitness and availability. Like, what do you think about that? Is it because the thing with bench boost is if you're not using a wildcard set up with it, and you see this in real FPL, it's pretty difficult to plan way in advance. It's a lot of moves just to make the use of one chip. I do think in general FPL this is probably the most overrated chip. So what do you think about in terms of this game in particular?
Yeah, I'm completely with him. As soon as you see a week where you're having bench headaches, just play it. I think some of the guys at the top, I think FPL Irons, who's consistently been in like the top 10, he played it in a random week where he had good fixtures, made quite a lot of points from it. And every week I've kind of looked at if I've got an opportunity. For me, I've only got one keeper, so I'm always hesitant because I think, well, obviously I'm one player down already from it. So when will I ever be in a position to use it? Probably after my wildcard when I put two keepers in. But if an opportunity comes along, I certainly won't hesitate to pull the trigger because, yeah, you just never know, do you? I mean, I had all these plans for Shearer. I was coming into this week, Middlesbrough home to Newcastle, thinking I've got Gordon, I've got Boksic. I'm going to save my free transfer, ready for my double move to Viduka and Shearer next week. But suddenly Silvestre gets injured, Gordon's low condition, Boksic is. I think planning too far ahead is a big risk, really. So ideally 23 would be a nice time to use it because there's potentially quite a few doubles there, and some of the weaker sides where people have got people on the bench like Ipswich are playing Blackburn in that week. You've got Charlton, a few people got like McAllister and things at home to Everton. So I think if there's a standout week to plan, it's probably that in a double, but don't be afraid to fire it whenever you need to.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I'm actually tempted to play it this week because once Silvestre gets transferred out to whoever, probably to another Man United defender, and they're both playing West Ham at home. My bench options. McPhail's playing Liverpool away, which I understand is not great. Probably are at home. It is Chelsea, but they are at home, and we know what they're like for Bournemouth. So I just wish I had Hreiderson, really. So I'm thinking about just playing. I'll have a look at Game Week 23 and see what players I might have by then. But yeah, I don't want to say it's overrated to just waste it whenever, but like it does feel difficult to plan in this game just with the amount of kind of red cards and stuff and injuries we've seen so far. And like I have played it, obviously played it in FPL this year in a single game week and it went okay. I wouldn't be expecting to get that many points in this, but yeah, I think you've got the only thing I'll say about bench boost, you've really got to temper your expectations. Like for me, 16 to 20 points is fine. Like any more than that, and it's just absolute joy really. If you can get around that. And you think you might get that from the bench options you got, that'd be what I would go for, to be honest.
Yeah, 10 to 15 is what I'd be hoping for. At the end of the day, you're going to be playing three forwards most week, and most of your points come from your forwards, your captains, and then maybe the odd cheeky clean sheet you pick up. Outside of Johnston, there isn't many midfielders who return consistently. So most of your midfielders are going to be your Biscans, your McPhails, who pick up your 2 points. So you're gonna have to expect 2 points, 3 points at max from most of your bench options, unless you've got a serious amount of money on your bench.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. I don't know if I'll use it this week. We'll see. All right, so someone's just asked in the chat about Boksic. We've already kind of touched on him, and there's a question as well. 2.0 is Boksic a complete waste of money in the current sim? Well, is it Ricard? Is it Ricard? Is that how you pronounce that name?
Yeah,
yes, it is.
Ricard, yeah.
Yeah, is playing. Will he do just as well at a cheaper price? So I had a look at how Boksic has been doing, and there's 11 strikers ahead of him in the points chart so far, in total FPL points. That's all I looked at. And if you price at 7 million or less, which is what his price is, there's 5 ahead of him. Sturridge, Las Lendes, I still pronounce him wrong for Sunderland, Bartlett and Parhas, and Ricard himself has got one more point and he's 0.5 million cheaper. Now he has played more minutes than Boksic, which is why he's outscoring him. But there are quite a few attackers ahead of him. Like, what do you think about him in general? Obviously, fitness isn't looking good at the moment. Is he one we should be getting rid of? Do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a bit harsh on Boksic. It's a complete waste of money. For a start, he started the season injured. He's been injured again. So when he's actually taken to the field, he's not been that bad. I mean, he was my forward for this double, and he ended up getting an assist over the double. So that matches up in the end to a striker who scored a goal in a single, really. So that wasn't too bad. I'm happy to take that, especially when you're playing Chelsea and Man United. I didn't expect him to get anything, to be honest. But I can see his point in terms of if there's other players performing better. But at the end of the day, I still think Boksic is one of the best forwards in the game, and Middlesbrough are one of the better teams in the game. So when they've got good games, I think he's still a great pick. The problem we've got now is the fact that in our version of McLaren, he likes to play pressing and short passing, which isn't often the case. And that causes conditions for players to drop very, very fast during games because obviously it's very hard work pressing the ball over and over. Now it's good to play that way because it's the best way to play in this game for like doing well. The best teams will do it, Man United, Arsenal, etc. But it obviously affects people's condition. It comes down quite a lot. Sometimes players can get away with losing maybe only 8% in a game if it's very easy. They barely do any work at all, and if they haven't got pressing on and stuff. But for Middlesbrough, they're obviously getting hammered. And then you combine that, and Boksic has got 13 for stamina, which is pretty poor. So he loses a lot more condition than the average player during a game. And then he's also got pretty poor natural fitness, which I think is 13 or 14, which means then he takes a long time to recover that fitness back. Well, not a massively long time, as 20 is the best. So it's not that bad, but it takes him a little bit longer than some other players. So you can buy all that into the Christmas period now, where we're going to have games every sort of few days. Because Middlesbrough obviously aren't usually in Europe and stuff, so they usually got time to recover, but they haven't. And you see the situation we're in now. Boksic's had one double and he's straight away on 80-something%. You then factor in he's highly injury prone as well, and I can see why people want to move away from him. I wanted him for this game, and my plan was always to get rid of him after this game. He's now so low that I think that there's a chance he starts because he's still in that range of just over 70% condition, but not flagged. So he could start this game by all means because he's one of their better players. But it's very unlikely he'll make 90, especially if there's a striker on the bench. Sometimes the AI is stupid and it won't put a striker on the bench. And in that case, Boksic will play 90 and just run himself into the ground. He'll be like 60% come the end of it. So you could get lucky that way. And of course, he could score in the early minutes anyway, but I usually see him come off around 55, 60 minutes in this scenario if he does start. And he is open to be benched. You've got Ricard who can come in. They've also got Nemeth. They've got Windass. They've got Whelan. They've got I think Job got loaned or something, but they've got options basically. So there's a good chance he could even start benched. So I think it's definitely time. That was a very long answer, but I think it's probably time to get rid of him unless you want a chance a 60-minute game, which he could. It's home to Newcastle, right? He could start and score in that.
But the thing is, even if he gets through this game, potentially a risk going forward for those kind of three.
I don't know how close the games are, so I would look at that and see if they are close. Then you'd always have that worry of coming on. I had originally planned because if you actually look at game week 21, he's home to West Ham, which is obviously a great game. But the same week, Leeds, Viduka is away to Spurs. Now that's, you can argue that's an all right game because Spurs can't defend. But what my plan originally was to come off Viduka for 1 week to get Boksic just for that plum West Ham game and then switch back to Viduka. But I don't know what I was thinking I could plan transfers like that in this game.
Would you think? Do you think just going to Ricard then is a viable option? Because if he's going to play most of those minutes, those good fixtures.
I mean, Ricard's not nailed. He is the preferred striker partner to Boksic in nearly every sim, and it looks that way here. He's not totally nailed, is all I'll say, but he's doing very, very well. He does often end up playing right wing for quite a lot of the game, and Johnston actually goes up front. That's my other concern, but it hasn't stopped him so far. I think he got 2 assists. I mean, if anyone's able to see the Middlesbrough stats from the Man United game, I think we had them up earlier. If you go back and look at that, you will see that Johnston failed to win quite a few headers. So basically, he almost certainly went up front. And Ricard got 2 assists. And if you look at his attribute, it looks like he played right wing and actually played those into Johnston, for one of them maybe. So yeah, that's the other thing is, do you want a forward who's actually playing right wing? At the moment, it's working for him, but will it long term? I don't know.
I need to find 0.5 million so I can get Pedersen in. That's what I'm thinking now. I wasn't thinking of getting rid of him, but now you've convinced me I need to get rid of him. All right, so not a complete waste of money, but it might be the time to potentially jump off. I think that's a fair answer. All right, so we've got loads more questions. So some of these we've already covered, so we're not going to cover them again. The Ranieri sacking, we've already spoken about that. Does it make Chelsea assets more desirable? Boksic fitness, we've already spoken about that. Next one, Chris Hermitage, Scowcroft replacements, not named Salakovic. Price range, any mids, basically 8 million and below. Not sure what teams to target apart from Leeds. I'll just say it. Johnston, if you've not got him, seems like the obvious option, unless you're Luke, you want to be a bit different. Anyone else that kind of jumps at you for 8 million? I will say one thing, right, actually, sorry, before you answer that, is Leicester's, so this is, obviously we're talking about Scowcroft, so Leicester's fixtures, Bolton away, I think you said before, Bolton are usually quite open, Spurs at home, Villa at home. Do you need to get rid of Scowcroft, is my first question. He plays up front a lot.
No, I don't think you do. He's playing up front and he scores goals. Again, it depends how much you buy into this form thing. I mean, I see that as the Fowler thing. Fowler had a good matchup after his double and he scored and people said he was a troll. I can understand why they said he was a troll, but it was a decent game. You're playing Southampton, the worst defence in the league. It's always a chance. And now that Leicester have got some good games, there's a good chance Scowcroft could be in the goals again. So yeah, I agree with that.
If you were going to replace him though, who would you go for? Outside of Johnston, who I guess is just the obvious pick at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to throw this back to you instantly because it's an incredibly hard one to pick a decent midfielder, isn't it? And that's half the struggle of this game. Whoever I say is going to be a slight punt because they're not highly consistent. I really wanted to say Kieran Dyer at 8 million, who's the exact price and has got those 2 nice games because we couldn't go Dyer, but he's now out injured as well, so I can't say him. You've got Chelsea, who we don't know who they're going to be playing, and the new manager is going to come in. So suddenly we could have Gronkjar as an option. We could have Zenden as an option. We could have Stanic as an option. We could have Carboni. We just don't know yet. So probably one of them eventually might be an option. And then I still Man United games are still good. So if you're not on 3, I think you can consider Roy Keane. I know that he can obviously get sent off, which is annoying, but he does get very high ratings when he plays and he scores and assists. So if you're without a third Man United, I think he's not a bad punt. And aside from that, I'm starting to struggle, and it starts to get more and more punny. I think Patrick Berger's been doing very, very, very well for Liverpool. He seems to have, because it's hard to judge Berger on Sims because he starts injured for 4 months, and Liverpool rotate generally anyway. But what you'll see come the end of the season is Berger will have probably played around 20, 22 games. So that suggests to me that once he comes back fit, he basically plays most of the games at left wing. And that's what's happened so far. He's been playing them and he's been scoring and assisting. So I think Berger is worth a look. I played a sim as Liverpool, just managing them myself, and he surprised me how many goals I was able to get out of Berger. So yeah, I think he could be an option because their fixtures are pretty good.
Yeah, I think unless you can get like even if you get 0.5 million to go for someone like Boa Morte, even his fixtures aren't great for the long haul. I really think unless you haven't already got Johnston, I think you just keep Scowcroft unless you need the money. But yeah, that wasn't mentioned in the question. So I think you keep him. I think the fixtures are good enough, and Luke loves form. Maybe he can play himself back into some form with the fixtures. Anyway, let's move on from him. You get to talk about your man now, Carl Court. So James Wood said, looks like Shearer's injured for Newcastle's nice run. I mean, Shearer's just always injured. Is Carl Court a viable option, even captain material? Surely he's not that good. What do you think?
Well, again, anyone can bang in this game. Carl Court's got the attributes to do it. He's actually a really, really good forward in it. I don't know how, because he wasn't that good in real life as far as I can remember. But he is good in this. It hasn't really worked for him so far, but that doesn't really faze me. And I think home to Ipswich and home to Southampton are good. So if he's going to play both those games, which again he's not totally nailed, but he should do, especially with Shearer out. I'm not sure what the case of Bellamy is at the moment, but I think he's out. I don't think he's been playing either. So I'd expect Court to play. I won't say certainly, because home to Southampton is a great game. I wouldn't be looking to captain him. I mean, on the same day you've got Leeds at home to Fulham, so you're probably competing against a lot of Vidukas on that day, and Man United are playing Charlton, Van Nistelrooy. So aside from the 19, which is tricky for captain, home to Ipswich, I like him as a little pick. I don't mind him at all, but Pedersen is probably safer. Is probably my short answer.
Well, I can't remember if I already asked you. I don't think I did. If you got Boksic, you're going to replace him. Who are you going to replace him for?
Well, I've got 4 million in the bank, so
easy.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go either straight to Viduka or maybe take a stopgap on Phillips for 1 week before I go there, because Sunderland are home to Blackburn.
Fair enough.
I need to start playing the game week in front of me, Andy, because if I bring in Viduka now for the away to Liverpool game, where he probably won't do much, he'll almost certainly get injured, and then I'll have to make another swap before I go for his good run. That's what's been happening.
I like the aggressive play, to be honest, going for a player that's got a good fixture this week and then worrying about Viduka.
Yeah, and Saha's in that frame as well, because Marley's potentially out. So home to Derby, Saha for 1 week, your old mate.
Yeah, if he was more nailed, I'd definitely be looking at him. But I can't go there again just to get him back out. But all right, fair enough. Maybe Carl Court is an option, and maybe even a captain option. I think James, let us know. Tag us both on Twitter if you end up captaining Carl Court. I want to see that. I
can see his rationale because he plays in the blank and he then potentially has a double afterwards, and that's why I wanted to go Shearer. Now I'm prepared to wait for Shearer, but if you want to go Carl Court, I think it could work at the end of the day.
Nice. Maybe be the top scorer for the week with Carl Court. That'd be interesting. All right, 3 questions left. 2 of them are definitely you. The first one though, Richard Nyquist. Who's the best Man United asset? 6 to 8 million range, whether a defender or a midfielder. Hasn't mentioned forwards. I guess York could be there, but defender or midfielder, best Man United asset. Like, I feel like it's just the defenders for me. That's where I'm not even looking at the cheaper midfielders. I either want Beckham or Veron or no one. What do you think for Man United?
Well, yeah, because he's given that range. The only midfielder that plays consistently who's in that range is Keane. So I've already mentioned him. You could go him. You're at risk of a red card. The boring answer is Blanc again, isn't it? He's 6 million. You can't trust any of the other fullbacks to play consistently. I would, if you told me Neville was nailed, then Gary Neville then I'd go for him over Blanc, because I think playing at right back gives you a better opportunity for higher average ratings. But Blanc's been taking the mick this sim. He's getting assists last week. He got goal. He's got like 2 goals. He's got assists.
Legend.
Yeah, it doesn't really happen like that usually. He still struggles for bonus, but he's doing better than anyone expected, and he's the safe pick, isn't he?
He's not
Essentially,
nailed, but Gary Neville does play majority minutes right back, right? He's going to
he
play
does.
most minutes.
He will do. He also can play centre back, so he's probably the next nail down the line. It's just you could go Irwin left.
And Van Nistelrooy, I'm pretty much just going to swap Silvestre straight to Gary Neville, I think, and just stick there. I think midfielders just. I think although there's not a huge amount of midfielders availability that are doing really well elsewhere, I just think there probably is better options in other teams for that range. Personally, I'd rather put it in defence, but that's just me. Rob Reed. With games every 3 days over Christmas, is there going to be a ton of rotation and rested players, even more than there is now? What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's just going to come down to their condition. So there's not going to be any more rotation than you see normally outside of playing low reputation sides. That doesn't change. The area doesn't think like, oh, I've got a game in 3 days, I better rest someone. It doesn't work like that. It's just going to be the fact that there's going to be a lot of players who struggle to make it back up to 100. So whenever they're in that range of 70% to like 90%, 90 sort of 3-4%, and they've got a player who's quite comparable to them in their ability and reputation, then they've always got a chance of missing out. And I've said it to you right at the start, and everyone, you go across the sim, you go back and you look how many people played 38, you can count it on one hand. So that's even if they've been fit for the whole season. So there's always a chance, yes, if their condition isn't up to scratch, that they could miss out. You're just gonna have to make sure your benches are strong. You can't predict it, and you can't really try and plan around it. Really, I mean, they're going to obviously let us know after each game week who's on what condition, and you just need to be aware. Like, have I got someone who can come in if this guy doesn't play? That's basically the only thing you can do about it, I think.
Yeah, and we've spoken a lot about cheap defenders like Ipswich defenders and stuff that are good bench options. So I think that's my plan. Not really worry about it too much. If it happens, it happens, and just go from there. And then last question, Leafy Dragon FPL. Similar to what happened to Liverpool, will the AI realise that Newcastle are in a position that does not match their reputation and fix that, which will then give Newcastle a boost in form? Fixtures suggest that opportunity is there. You've already mentioned them. If that's the case, is Basidas, I might have pronounced it wrong, the best option?
And therefore gave them a boost in form. Liverpool were already a decent team. They just had bad injuries, a little bit of bad luck. And then they suddenly had a great run of some really good games. I mean, what was it? Home to Derby, home to Fulham, and then playing Southampton away or something. I mean, they're three of the worst teams in the league, so they've always had a chance to do well. Fixtures can create the form, so to speak. So it's not. I don't think some magic AI code in the background saying, "Oh, Liverpool are doing bad, we should boost them." I don't think it quite works like that. But anyway, now I see what you're saying. Newcastle been particularly bad. They've now got a tough game to begin with, but then they've got two pretty nice ones: home to Ipswich, home to Southampton. Ipswich isn't easy. We've seen how good they've been doing, but home to Southampton is close to a banker most of the time. So I think that someone from Newcastle will probably do well. That's why I wanted to say Dyer. Basidas is a little bit expensive for me at 9.5, but I don't doubt that he could do well in those games.
I think this happens, just really quickly to touch on it, I think this happens a lot in FPL. Like, people bang on about it's either fixture or it's form, but then a player is suddenly out of form, and then you look back, well, they've just played 3 out of 4 games against the top 6, so he's not really out of form. It's just a lot more difficult to score points in that. So obviously this is a coded computer game, so there might be something in there for something or other I don't know about, but it happens in real life all the time. Players are out of form, and FPL managers only buy players on form, and then suddenly they have good fixtures and they start scoring. Then they're on form. Well, actually, they just played 3 of the bottom sides. So it happens quite a lot. And you've already mentioned how good Newcastle's fixtures are. That is the end of the questions. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I'm extremely hot, Andy. I think that's it.
Yeah, I like it. So like I said, this will be the last pod for now on this channel, but Luke will be doing an extra stream over on the actual Chat Manager FPL YouTube account. So I'll leave the link in the description below. If you are a new player as well, you can get involved on the website. Again, check the description below. I'll have it all there. Otherwise, I'll say thanks, Luke, and goodbye.
Thanks a lot for having me, mate, and it was a pleasure. I'm sure I shall see you again for Sky videos and the like moving forward when the season starts again.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've enjoyed this, to be honest. I've actually, I don't feel like I know more than I thought I would, but I think I'm doing better than I thought I would for sure. And one thing I really like about these games, really quickly add on compared to FPL, is because I know I'll go back to FPL and play as I always do, but you can be way more aggressive in this. I wish I could. I'm playing this how I wish I could play FPL. I just can't do it.
You can play FPL.
No, I can't. I can't. That's what I'm saying. You literally can. I can't. That's the difference. I have to be boring. That's
yeah. I wouldn't recommend doing it, but you can do it that way.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. We will see you soon. Cheers, all.
See you guys.